A warm welcome to all our viewers to our series Natural Medicine. What would a headline in the news, in the free media, look like if someone came up with something incredibly innovative in the area of air that increases our oxygen utilization so that even more oxygen comes into the cell, the body can produce more energy, more ATP? What would a headline be for that? Well, we put one together for you. Listen to this.
German startup company decrypted energy code of the breathing atmosphere. Corresponding vitalizers transfer energy very easily and can be used almost anywhere. Do doctors now have the key to increase people's self-healing ability? Do we all now have the chance to dramatically increase the amount of energy available to us each day? The fact is that this technical innovation miracle from Germany will take the world by storm. German craftsmanship paired with a high spirit of innovation.
So, dear viewers, that is how one of such headlines would look in the media, especially today. And I want to tell you the gentleman who actually deserves this headline, but has never received it to this day. That's Mr. Guido Bierter from Airnergy, and I'd like to interview him today and warmly welcome him via Zoom. Hello, Guido. Hello, Alexander. Good afternoon. Yeah, unfortunately, this headline never came up, although there was actually media interest. They tried to break you instead of picking you up and saying, wow, now we have something that was missing so far. They actually used the metaphorical thumb screws and tried to break you. But they didn't succeed. No, not until now, not after 20 years, even then in the 6th or 7th year, that was the 7-year itch, so to speak. They tried to drag us, or our technology, through the dirt, but well, that has more to do with the consciousness of the people, because journalists are, of course, people too, and publishers are people too, but the consciousness of the breathing air may not yet exist, or is present to the extent that it should be present, because we have to do it from the first to the last breath, and we have no alternative. If we didn't breathe for 2 minutes, or maybe 3 minutes, that would have been it with life. So there is no real awareness of it at all, and I think we have freed up an energy reserve, cracked an original code, so to speak, that simply from the existing air, without giving more oxygen or anything else, without ionizing and without ozone, provides more energy for the body. And of course we thought, okay, the media are waiting for it. Finally no more chemistry, finally not this, finally not that, but just air that's most comparable to the healthy forest air, as we all know it. So it was more or less a forest air generator. But back then we tried to a certain extent to gain trust via the medical way. And that backfired massively. We were dragged through the dirt. I mentioned it on another episode, even the ZDF Viso series was involved. And all the scientific things that we have worked out to the highest degree were just ignored. But in the end, it was a good thing, because years later, we received science awards and so on, so they didn't succeed, and I'm still waiting for the big headline, because ultimately it's about the leading media, as the saying goes, or the mainstream media, I don't even know how to put it. But media like Quantisana TV or all the naturopathic magazines were of course interested in us and our technology. We've hundreds of specialist publications written by professors, like Professor Jung, who's leading our scientific advisory board for 10 years. Well, the problem is, these media, of course, receive little attention. That is the challenge for all of us, to attract attention. And the leading media, well, they don't take up the subject. They've already tried with little things. And we provided the appropriate budget for this, and then it worked. But in a real journalistic way, as it used to be, to investigate the matter and for and against, unfortunately that never happened. I know that oxygen was actually extracted from the air because it can be marketed medically and used medically. Oxygen cylinders can be made. So here you can really work with it. That's why it ultimately spread. Regarding our air, I think very few people know what else is in the air besides oxygen. That's very interesting, that we have no idea at all. I don't understand it either. And yet I still want to bridge a gap to recent years. There have been a lot of studies. You mentioned the word forest. There are many studies now about forest bathing, especially from the Asian region, where it's clearly proven that you get a completely different energy in the forest. Get a completely different air that has been proven to be good for the body. Out of the question. And here we are equipped with far more parameters than just the oxygen content. CO2, that's the next topic. If you look back a little more than a year, it's January 2021 now. If we look back a year, before it started with Corona, the media was all about CO2. CO2, that they even said we're no longer allowed to do this or that, because even when we exhale, or when cows breathe or exhale, especially exhale, that it would be all too much. Very, very interesting that you're saying that this topic is off the table. I haven't read anything for 12 months. Exactly. And we have this little brochure, the little Atmos. I can only recommend it to everyone. This is simply an information brochure with information we usually just don't have. For example, how much CO2 is there actually in the air? What is a lot? What is a little? For example, we see a CO2 percentage of 0.04%, almost worldwide, in the air. But then we also talk about the relative humidity, where we at Energy say that is the key, because oxygen alone can't really do anything. It has to be in connection with the water molecules, with the water vapour. Only then can it work, because then the water molecules become reactive. So that's our active medium. Only if you go out with such preparations or with such information as the first developer, then of course you're ridiculed, then you're insulted, and I don't know what else. But we've been in the market for 20 years, and we can just say, you can say that we're liars, but we were able to realise several million applications through our customers. More than 100,000 individual energy catalysts have come onto the market in more than 60 countries. And the feedback is 80-90% positive, period. And people who say, I don't want to do without it anymore, yeah, I know that, I also know it. It's just air in its natural composition. We're not increasing the oxygen, we increase the relative humidity a little, due to the fact that, of course, in air-conditioned or in temperature-controlled rooms, the heating takes out the relative humidity, but we need that at around 50-55% so that we can get the best energy out of the atmosphere. But the only thing we do is run the air through a water bath, so let it bubble, and of course the relative humidity is increased. But no one needs more oxygen. Why? Because 75% of the oxygen we breathe in, we breathe out unused as a healthy person. With increasing age, illness, lack of exercise, poor nutrition, and in particular increasing electric smog, in the end the body or the cell loses its ability to make better use of the oxygen in the air. That's why we had a look. How does nature do it? That the oxygen comes into the form that the body can best utilise it. And so we became aware of photosynthesis, and then with all sorts of means and situations, finally managed to reproduce a photosynthesis technologically and bring it to any place in the world in the form of a small, compact breathing apparatus. You mentioned a brochure before. Can you request it free of charge? Yeah, it's free, and it's not particularly full of ads. It's all about that, really. The things that we know. Our children should learn in school. Or parents should teach children. I can't understand it at all. Or the scientists who support us with the scope of energy. None of them can understand it. Ask some of the doctors you deal with. What can they really tell you about details from the air you breathe? I think as part of university courses there are 2 or 3 hours that are invested, and, well, that was it. And we're not really surprised either. That's a bit heretical now, so to speak. But of course, chemistry, or as you said, separated oxygen, is easier to sell. That's a bit of a problem with energy. Just like botanical science or, in the herbal world, the plants. Most plants have the active ingredients that we need in them. But we just don't get them in the pharmacy. In the pharmacy we get the appropriate pills that have something similar in them. That's the problem. Energy, such a machine, you buy it once, it easily lasts 10 years. We've been on the market for 20 years. We still have machines in function for our customers that we sold 20 years ago. And that means that this is actually a catastrophe for the industry, because one device can easily revitalize 20 people a day, every day. And then it costs, 20, 30 cents per person. That's not much, of course. But the health system, you know that, is of course also very economically oriented. Yeah, unfortunately that is the case, but I also had to learn a bit, and also learn not to judge it, because it is actually all logical and understandable. That you are actually, say as a pharmacist, for example, or as a pharmaceutical company, you are not responsible for the whole health of all people. But I focus on diseases and try here to find a solution to help in this disease. But I am not responsible for everyone's health. That actually depends on each person. Or, now with Corona, it has ended up with the government. The government is now ensuring that we stay healthy. I hope this continues, that we also exercise, get good nutrition, get good water, get enough real food and not just fatty foods. These are the next steps that I actually hope for, so that public health increases. But on the subject of air, I also think we should all be prescribed an hour's walk in the forest every day, so that we can bring these energies from the forest or from a waterfall through our lungs into our body. I mean, there's nothing to argue about now. Each of us know that we feel much more comfortable in the forest or at a waterfall or by the sea. There is something. Yeah, you're talking about our governments. We have the feeling after 20 years as a total lateral entrant in the industry that we humans are no longer in a position that is a debt to collect the knowledge of what we have. That is a debt to collect. We can't wait for the government to bring this or that. Under certain circumstances, that's not what we want either. That's why I say again, Little Atmos, the guide. There's so much information in there, because just out into relation, how many litres do we ideally drink per day? It's 2 to 3 litres. Now we know what air volume we take in. That's at least 10,000 litres for a healthy person. But that can also be 15,000 or 18,000 litres. What relation is that? And of the 10,000 litres, a fifth is roughly the oxygen content. But 75% of the oxygen content is exhaled without being consumed. So, if you know how to use the correct breathing technique and breathing methods, and above all can maintain or promote your health, energy, production and thus regeneration with properly treated air, then I think that's the most sensible thing you can do. And if you don't understand that, I always say, provocatively, then take a 2-minute break or 1 minute. Then you know how important it is to breathe. But we can't drink anything for a day, we survive. We can't eat anything for 3 weeks, we survive. But if we don't breathe for 3 or 4 minutes, then that's it forever. Then the first cells die and actually the whole being, the whole organism, a few seconds later. Now hang on, Guido. Can you move the microphone a little closer, that I understand you better? Somehow the audio got a bit worse. And what you say was very important. I'll repeat it, dear viewers. In other words, we breathe in between 7,000 to 10,000 litres of air within 24 hours. You have to imagine that between 7,000 and 10,000 litres of air, and 1/5 of that is oxygen. And of this fifth, we exhale 75% again. But all this air, this great mass of air that we breathe, we give almost no meaning to it. We see if we eat 200 grams of fruits and vegetables or drink 2 litres of water, but we're talking about 7 to 10,000 litres of air. And then a lot of health aspects can be in here. I also measured that here. I had such a measuring device here where I could measure the oxygen utilisation. And I've noticed, especially in sick people, that the oxygen utilisation increases very quickly if you breathe activated air, so-called forest air. This is one of the parameters that is often a bit subjective, but we've been working objectively since 2002, already with the HRV, heart rate variability measurement, because that seems smarter to people than our subjective perception. For 8 or 9 of 10 users, it signaled that the autonomic nervous system is reacting immediately. That means we have to be in balance there between the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems. And when we're always stressed, we can't repair or regenerate. And energy, that's been proven 1,000 times, stimulates the parasympathetic nervous system. So our relaxation nerves. This allows the body to relax, and only then can it repair. We also notice that in almost all users, the heart rate goes down by 5 to 10%. Through the economization of the metabolism, simply because the special air is breathed and nothing else. Also, an important point, thank you very much. Again, the parasympathetic nervous system is the relaxation mode. And many doctors tell me again and again here, with the sympathetic nervous system, we are in stress mode, where the body can't make any repairs. It reduces everything to the minimum to be able to perform. And the parasympathetic nervous system is the relaxation mode. That's where the repair processes begin. And you just said it's proven that when you breathe, the parasympathetic nervous system is stimulated. That means I come into relaxation, and now the body can regain its self-healing powers and devote them to the things that are necessary at the moment. Exactly. These are the two decisive parameters in the context of our autonomic nervous system. So not the central nervous system, which we can control at will. When we say, for example, okay, I'll take a break now, or something like that, then we do it. The autonomic nervous system actually regulates everything. It's our regulation and control center for our kidney function, heart function, blood pressure, and all sorts of things. And we know when we say, okay, I want to make my heart beat faster now, then it doesn't work deliberately, but autonomously. If these two players are optimal and in balance, they can, of course, work much better together. Only today is it like this. We have to answer, I don't know how many thousands of emails a day or a week, and I don't know how many other responsibilities there are, or all the catastrophes that we hear on the radio, hear on the news. It all upsets us a bit. But then we're just not able to regenerate. We can only do that at night when we're relaxing. Basically, energy also helps there, because you also know that 8 or 9 out of 10 users, as a rule, can suddenly sleep much better after a few days or a few weeks of use. If they sleep more deeply, they automatically have more energy throughout the next day. Yeah, I even know people who sleep with the device all night. But basically, I think it's enough to breathe for 20 or 30 minutes 2 or 3 times a day, right? The question for beginners is always what they want to achieve. Professional athletes, for example, use it before training, after training, before a race, after a race, because it also supports regeneration. But we always say start slowly. When people start taking heavy medication or the like, we just say 5 or 10 minutes at first, and that can then be increased to 20 minutes. What we highly recommend is it's starting to make sense at 2 or 3 times a week, but of course that's not the highlight. Daily would be ideal. For example, people with COPD breathe for 10 or 20 minutes in the morning, depending on their well-being, and then again in the afternoon. Some people get energized from it. They're then a bit hyper, so of course it makes sense to breathe or inhale in the morning, or vitalize as we call it. And some people get tired through it, especially those who are exhausted or have burnout or something. They're then simply relaxed in the moment and fall asleep straight away. That means you just have to use it in the morning or in the evening. But that changes again after 1, 2 or 3 months, when the body has got used to it again, has regenerated or repaired some processes. Then it no longer needs to adjust to it. But then the pure energy can actually be felt. It's usually like that. At the beginning, we brought a wonderful headline that we've been expecting for you for a long time. But now, for these well-known reasons, because air is not a, element, protectable by patent, we all can't protect it. Any procedure, as you did, it is protected. Or actually, only you know how it works. You made a technical replica of this photosynthesis. Actually, I don't want to compare it to Coca-Cola, but there is still a comparability. Anyone can drink it, but nobody knows the recipe, and nobody's allowed to copy the recipe. But it's just about the precision of the information. Because, as you know, air energy is also a Nikola Tesla technology. Bottom line, we work with vibrations, frequencies and resonances. It depends, of course, if we get the optimal response with these, let me say, tools that we have in our catalytic converters. Then we have optimal energy. You're addressing a certain competitive situation that gave up within the last 20 years. We can live with that very well. And you simply couldn't touch our patent, let alone violate it. This is our advantage. But we still have a market share of, well over 90%. We are the pioneers in all areas. We've prepared all the science. But in the end, Alexander, the market is so big, that we're now coming with an entry-level model because we just want to reach a lot of people. We mostly had the professional devices or the design devices like Spy Royal, but now in February the 21st, we introduced a device called LA. The abbreviation stands for Little Atmos. Oh! That's exactly the same abbreviation as for the brochure. And that's a whole concept behind it. There's the video, there's the brochure, and other surprises that come there, so that you have an idea. Maybe you'd like to show a small photo, because it's only a third of the size of the devices that you know. So our classic, the Professional Plus, and we managed to reduce the size by 2/3. And the LA device corresponds to the Basis Plus, but much more compact. You'll love it. I think people have seen this before. But it's exactly the same design representation, but just about, let's say, 70% smaller. Great, I'm very happy to hear things like that. I won't show a photo, otherwise it'll become a commercial, which it definitely is not, because here we really want to talk about your story and the meaning of air. And I want to wish you with all my heart that it continues to go so well, and that at some point the world will really take a closer look and you'll really get these headlines that you really do deserve. Perhaps at some point it'll also be a takeover of a large company that will then spread it around the world. It's only important that such a technology does not simply disappear in a drawer like so many others do. Dear Guido, I would just like to conclude, or for you, dear viewers, that this technology in the air sector has already been awarded by a state president, a former state president, who put his signature for an award for this innovation. So I think the subject of air will one day be brought more into consciousness of everyone, and not because of the pure CO2, which is really only a very small part within the whole air spectrum, but the energy in the air will be an issue, right? I summarized it correctly? You did right, exactly. I think someone once said that air only becomes significant when it becomes visible. I don't think we should wait that long. But maybe it's the right moment for it to be felt. Because that's energy. You can feel the air all at once, but not in such a way that you inhale once or twice, and then you're a different person. We always say energy doesn't have a Popeye effect. We know him, the spinach sailor. But you have to use it regularly. And in 20 years, we were surprised by what is possible with it. For the next 20 years. All the best, dear Guido. Thank you, Alexander. And you too, dear viewers. I wish you all the best. See you next time.